Welcome to Blender Frenzy. I am Justin with a new tutorial and new wireless headset, JBL Quantum. It is awesome. It was given to me as a gift and I love it. So I'm going to debut it now with a new tutorial talking about hiding and revealing text. So I'm going to show you several ways you can do it. The first two ways are in the video sequence editor. And we're just going to be using the text, and then we're going to just use the cropping feature. So you can animate the cropping feature on the text, on any of the strips actually, but the text specifically, left, right, top, and bottom. And then the other one is with a modifier and a mask. So we have a color strip here. You can see I've animated the crop on the color, and then I've hidden this, and then I've applied that mask to the text. So that's for the video sequence editor, but for the main 3D mode of Blender, we can do this using something like an empty and a material on some 3D text. Now this text is 3D, but I'm only using it for 2D purposes. It's actually only 2D in the 3D view, but we are in the 3D view, you can see, and if I move this, it is hiding and revealing that. So it would look something like this. Disable our overlays, and the animation would look something like this. Let's end it here and play. So it kind of loops through like that. So for this tutorial, I'm using 3.5.0. You can use these techniques, I think, in pretty much all of the Blender versions, at least all recent ones. But we're going to do video editing first. So I'm going to go over here, click this plus, go to video editing, and we're going to collapse this. And I'm also going to, before I forget, go to render properties, scroll all the way down to color management, and turn filmic to standard. Then let's come down here, add in text. I'm just going to bring this up. I don't know why. Pull this out a little bit, and then I'm going to press the period on the numpad to zoom in. So here's our text. I don't like that font or size. We're bringing this up a little bit, and we're going to open a font. And apparently they've updated the display for the fonts in Blender 3.5, and I really like it. Look at all this. This is really cool. But I'm just going to grab something simple, not too distracting. I think this one. And then we'll type in Blender Frenzy. And like I said, it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. All we have to do is animate the crop on our text strip. So scroll down to crop, and we have this slider for the right. We can do it from the left as well. So at the beginning on frame 1, I'm going to have this, we'll pull this out just before the B and click this button to make a keyframe. And then I'm going to go to view and unshowing the seconds. So frame, I'm going to go to frame 20 and then type in 0 here and then click this button for another keyframe. And we can pull this up too to see where our keyframes are. So something right here. Pull this over with our middle mouse and scroll in. But now you can see as we scrub through the timeline, that is animating the crop. And if we just click out so the text strip isn't selected, you can see it a little bit better. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Let's use a mask now. So I'm just going to delete these keyframes, go to the beginning. I'm going to add in a color and just G and Y to grab that, pull that up. I'm just going to match this, hold Control while I drag the handle. Snap that there. And I'm going to do the same thing with the crop. So I'm going to set this crop to right before the B, add a keyframe, go to frame 20, set this to 0, and another keyframe. So we have this. But now what's this going to do? Well, it's going to act as our mask, but right now it's not going to show anything because using a color strip as a mask will use whatever color and its value. So between white and black for transparency. So black is completely transparent, white is completely opaque. This transparency and this black is basically considered all black by Blender. So in order to have the text use our mask, this mask actually has to be white so that it's completely opaque or visible. Now, we're not going to be able to see anything unless we change our text color, but I don't want to do that. So we just hide the color. And if we scroll down, you can still see that if we scrub through the timeline, our animation is still working. You can see that over here. The number is changing. So this is going to work just fine. We're just not going to be able to see our mask, which we don't need to. But we need to select our text, go to modifiers, and then add strip modifier mask. And if we have strip selected here, and then we can choose our color, now you can see if we scrub through the timeline, wherever that mask is, as long as it's full white, which it is, it's going to show whatever is using the mask. And this method is nice because you only have to add keyframes on the mask, and then anything else you bring in, see, we bring in another text, and we're just going to do is awesome because it is. And then we'll just bring this down a little bit. See, now both of them, because I duplicated it, both of them are using this mask as its visibility and transparency, so it automatically adds. And I didn't have to add any more keyframes on this one. Now I did duplicate it. It would have added the keyframes anyway, but even if I hadn't, if I just bring in new text, and right now it's not using that mask, you can see, but all we have to do is go to modifiers and mask and use the color as the mask. And now, ta-da, we haven't added any extra keyframes on our new text. So there you go. That is the video sequence editor. Let's go to the 3D mode. I'm just going to select everything and delete it because this is just demonstration. I'm going to add in a text and then 7 to go into top mode. And then let's edit this text by tabbing in and enter frenzy. Oh, I don't want to hit enter. I keep doing that. Tab out into object mode. And let's go to material preview, which right now it shows white, but it doesn't actually have any material, I don't think. So let's pull up another window and change this to the shader editor. Yep, so no materials. Here's the default material. I'll just select this one, select this node and X to delete that. So now everything's black, and I want to plug in a shader, emission shader, right here. And now whatever I put into this color, it will be there. So I'm going to do something like a nice blue. Okay, so to demonstrate this a little bit better, we're going to add in a mesh plane. We're going to give it the same material. I'm going to hide my text right now, and then what we'll do is add in with Shift A texture, gradient texture. And if you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, Control Shift click. I know most of you know, but if you're new, Node Wrangler add-on, edit, preferences, click add-ons, and then search for Node Wrangler and then enable it. That allows you to Control Shift click on any of these to connect them. And we could choose our gradient here. So we've got linear, we've got quadratic, easing, diagonal, and so on and so forth. I'm going to choose quadratic because this is a nice gradient from 0, which is full black, to 1, which is full white, which this will act just like our mask in the VSE, except for now we have a little bit of a feather that we can control and adjust. Okay, and let's see how that would work. If we want to use this as a mask for the color, so we want this to be on, except for where it fades into black, which should fade into transparency. So let's add in a shader, transparent, and then again with the Node Wrangler, Control Shift and then right click and then drag to connect those, and then that will get a mix shader in. You can also just Shift A and right click and add in a mix shader right here and then connect them manually. So right now the transparent is in the top and the emission is in the bottom, and the factor is set to 0.5. So if I pull this all the way to 0, you can see it's fully transparent or fully black where the transparency should be. And if I pull this up to 1, it's fully opaque or visible where our emission is showing. But we don't want this to be fully black when it's 0. We want this to be invisible. And so the way we do this in Eevee, remember we are working in Eevee, and then come down to the material properties and make sure you're on your material, which is now showing black, and scroll all the way down to settings, and then the blend mode should be alpha blend. And now you can see where it was black, it is transparent. And these settings are also over here. If you press the N key, you can toggle this open and close. Go to the options, and you have settings right here. Same thing, blend mode. This is the same information over here. So I'm just going to close that. And now if we adjust the factor, you can see now it turns white while Blender is thinking, so it's kind of calculating. So if I just kind of go back and forth a little bit, now you can see the effect that this is having. And if I turn off my overlays, you can see it's fading in and out according to the factor. So if you haven't guessed already, we are, instead of using the slider, we're going to use our gradient texture as the factor into here. Now we don't plug the factor in, we plug the color in, which is a little confusing, to the factor. And now you can see wherever the white is, you see full visibility on the blue, and where the black is full transparency. And this will change according to whatever we set here. Diagonal, you can see it's diagonal. And if I Control Shift and click here, you can see that in black and white again. That just automatically connects this back up here. So going back to quadratic, we have this. So I'm going to keep it connected to the gradient texture now because we want to be able to manipulate this, because right now it's just a static gradient on this plane. So to do that, again with the Node Wrangler, if we select the gradient texture, Control T, then it's going to add these two. Now you can add them individually, but this is nice that it adds them for you. And the mapping, if we change the location, you can see what happens there. This is on the X location, so it's going to go left and right. The Y location is up and down, which doesn't seem to change anything. Now, if we did diagonal, you could see a difference in the Y location, of course. And actually, the X and the Y look like they do the same thing. And the Z location is in 3D space, so that's coming to and from the camera. That's not gonna, we're not gonna be able to see anything there either. But we can do rotation on the Z, so you can see that's rotating. And then, of course, the scale. So now we have a lot more control, but we want even more control because we don't want to just click sliders all day to make our animation. We want something nice and easy that we can click and drag like an empty, and we can. So let's go ahead and enable our overlays and add in an empty. I'll just do the plane axes. So if I click and drag, you can see this is what the empty is, and it's not connected to anything right now. So I'm going to right click to cancel that. And I'm also going to select the plane, and then with this material on here, click the pin button so that even if I select my empty, this stays open. Okay, so now we're using texture coordinate from generated, but I don't want to do this. And let's just see what this is. So Control Shift and click. This is our generated texture coordinate. And if I Control Shift and I just click, it will cycle through all of these. And you can see each one has a different color pattern. We're going to go to object, and the object you can see is dead in the center, and that's where the origin is of the object. In this case, since we haven't defined an object here, it's the plane itself. So wherever the plane is, that's where these colors are going to cross paths. So we want to change the coordinates from the plane to a different object, and that's going to be our empty. So we're just going to select empty here. And now if I move the plane, you see the colors stay where the empty is. And if I move the empty, the colors go where the empty goes. So we're going to use this information being plugged into our gradient texture. So let's plug that one back in. And if I move it, now you can see nothing is happening. And that is because for some reason it's now generated again. So we want this to be the object of the empty. That's what this is supposed to represent, the empty object. So we're grab now. Now when we move, you can see the gradient texture following. And we can, of course, just like before, mess with the X and the Y scale. So if we want a little bit of feather, or if we want a lot more feather, and you got to be careful because if you go past 0 and go into the negatives, it flips it. So maybe that's what you want, but yeah, we'll do something maybe like this. And then if I animate this now, I will be animating it from full visibility to invisibility. So let's go ahead and animate this, bring this over here. And a trick that you can do that I like to do in these situations is if I have my empty selected, I can press N to open up the transform panel, make sure you're on your item tab. And I only want to move the location, so I'm going to lock all of these other axes. And if I just click and drag down, it will lock everything else. And then if I come up here to our select box, click and hold, I'm going to choose tweak. That way I can just click and drag the empty, and it's not going to go up or down. It's only going to go left and right. So that is really super useful for animation. So I click and drag and click and drag. So if I pull this up now, and let's just move this over here. Let's go to the beginning. I'm going to turn on auto keying, and then we're just going to set this right here. Made an auto key on all of these here. which is a little bit excessive, but we're not going to worry about that now. So, and then we're going to go to frame 20 and then click and drag all the way over here, and it made a keyframe. I'm going to turn that auto key off because I don't want to accidentally create any more keyframes. But now if I scrub through the timeline, you can see what's happening, and we can just click play, and I will, on frame 30, we're going to end, or I should say the end is frame 30. So that way it can cycle through, and if I turn off my overlays, this is what's happening. Okay, so with that continuing to play, we're going to connect our mix shader again with everything in it, and now you can see it's disappearing. And so what we can do now is just apply this to our text. Actually, it's already applied to our text because our text is using the same material. So let's hide the plane and see the text, and you can see it doesn't fit it, so we have to adjust that animation a little bit more. So let's go to this keyframe, and we're going to bring, let's turn auto keying back on, bring this over here, and then that should have replaced that. Turn auto keying off, and let's just see. Yeah, there we go. And let's center this a little bit more, and then we have something like this. But we don't want this. We want it to go the other way. We want it to be revealed when it comes in, and that's really easy. All we have to do is switch the transparent and the emission around by just changing these here. And now if we press play, it reveals in words just like that. Now let's say you want to add other text with a different color, but you want the same gradient animation mask. Well, that's really easy. All we have is take what makes up our mask, which is just these three nodes here, select all three of them, Control G, and now we're inside a group. We have a group input here and a group output, and this is already connected to the output, and if we click out to deselect everything and then tab, we can see this is our group, and we can tab inside and out of the group. Title this Transparency, just like that. Okay, and then if we add in some more text, bring that down a little bit, tab into edit mode, and is really, and then with this, let's unpin this, so we want to make a new material on here, and then I'm just going to put an emission, and then we'll change this to an orange, cool orange color, yeah, like that. And now all we have to do, since we made a group, Shift A to add in group, and then here's our transparency, boom. And so remember, we need, let's do a mix shader, plug that in. I'm just doing this slightly differently than I did before, clicking the sockets and pulling them out and letting go, transparency, and choose transparent, there we go. And then we're going to use this color as the factor, just like before. And now we have two materials that are using this transparency gradient mask animation. Ta-da! Of course, the reason this is black is because we haven't changed this material to the blend mode. Again, that's on options here. And if you scroll down over here, it's on in the settings. This is also settings, same thing. Alpha blend, and now you can see they're using the same thing. And again, same thing like the VSE, you don't have to create any extra keyframes. It's automatically added because we're using the mask, which is animated. Now we can also come in here, transparency, and change this up, change the rotation and scale and stuff from here. So some pretty cool effects like that. And then we can also, if I bring this text back up to 0, so let's just put that at 0, I can switch these around for this one. So now we have Blender cool. That's pretty cool, actually. But now we have in our animation the opposite effect taking place. One is being revealed and the other is being hidden at the same time. So Blender Frenzy is really cool, except for I want it to be the other way around. So this will be the orange here. I'm just going to make this orange just for ease. And then for our other text, we can do blue, and then we'll switch these as well. Blender used to switch the sockets by itself. Oh, what did I do? How did I change that? What happened? I'm just gonna undo that. Oh, I accidentally plugged it in there. Whoops. So now we have Blender Frenzy starts off and then is really cool. Blender Frenzy is really cool. All right, and this effect also is really cool in my opinion. So that is it. That is how you hide and reveal text in Blender's VSC and the 3D view. If you want to see content like this and a whole lot more content and downloads and all that stuff, head on over to blenderfrenzy.com and become a member today. You can find this video and a whole lot more by going to my new website, blenderfrenzy.com, where you can access lots of free and members-only content, including extra tutorials, downloads, assets, blend files, Q&A live streams, and much more. Signing up helps support me, which in turn gives you more Blender content, so head on over to blenderfrenzy.com and become a member today.